What is up, guys? It is Quinn here, and in this video I'm going to be going through my week 9 start sits at the tight end position, going through all 13 matchups, talking about every single fantasy relevant tight end, listing them as either a start, sit, or a fringe option. Starts we want in our lineup, sits we're obviously sitting, and then fringe options are like back end tight end 1s, high end tight end 2s. Just to let you know before we do jump into the video, this week is kind of a weird spot because there's actually a decent amount of starting caliber tight ends that are on bye. So there's going to be, there's going to be a decent chunk of starts, but there's going to be a lot of fringe plays this week. So, if you have a fringe option, I wouldn't be overly concerned because it is a week where we do have a lot of these starting guys on bye. If you guys have any fantasy questions, drop them down below. I'll respond back to every single person. And then if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. But let's jump into the first matchup, Thursday Night Football, Eagles taking on the Texans. I think we have a pretty clear start and a pretty clear sit. We're going to continue to fire up Dallas Goedert as a mid-tier tight end 1, and then sitting O.J. Howard for the Texans. Then moving over to Sunday, we have the Chargers taking on the Falcons. And I actually have both Everett and Kyle Pitts listed as fringe plays. For Everett, so far he's been back-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2 territory. I think he's kind of just settled into that spot. So I think a fringe play is, pretty normal here for Everett. Now for Kyle Pitts, I feel like some people are going to be totally back in on Kyle Pitts, totally jumping back on the bandwagon after his 5 for 80 and a touchdown game. And, honestly, heading into the season, I was big on Kyle Pitts. I think I have him on at least 2 redraft teams. So I was very in on Kyle Pitts. I was willing to take him mid-third, late third. So I was a big Kyle Pitts guy. I'm really not going to be overreacting, hugely to this big game. Like, we know Kyle Pitts is talented, so he's going to have a few of these throughout the season. But, has the identity of the Falcons offense changed? I don't think so. Are they going to become, this decently pass-heavy team? I'm not expecting it. So I think at best, Kyle Pitts is still a fringe option moving forward. Last week, I listed him as a sit. I don't think one big game can take him from a sit all the way back to someone that I really want in my lineup. So he's going to settle in here on the fringe. I'm hoping he can turn it around. If he can keep this going, I will be a very happy man. But I do think we have to be a little skeptical, and we can't just buy back in after one game. Now moving over to the Dolphins taking on the Bears. For the Dolphins, I have Mike Gesicki here as like a lower end fringe play. He had a decent game on Sunday, 3 for 38 with a touchdown. The problem is his route participation has fallen back down. He had a game or two where he was up there 70+%. He was down to 58% this past week. So I think he's a fringe play. He's going to have touchdown upside, but he's not someone who needs to be started. On the other side with the Bears, I believe Cole Kmet had his first touchdown of the season. Still not someone we can be relying on for fantasy. Then we have the Panthers taking on the Bengals. For the Panthers, I think Tommy Tremble is a clear sit. For the Bengals, I think Hayden Hurst will continue to be a solid fringe option. He's going to have touchdown upside on that offense. He gets a decent amount of week-to-week involvement, but someone, he's replaceable, but you also don't feel terrible tossing him in there as your tight end 1. Then in a divisional matchup, we have the Packers taking on the Lions. For the Packers, I think we can continue to fire up Robert Tonyan as a fringe play. You don't love it, but with the bye weeks this week, like Schultz on bye, Dulcich on bye, Kittle on bye, I'm probably forgetting a solid tight end or two. I think he's a fringe play. And then for the Lions, normally this would be a TJ Hawkinson slot, but as I'm sure most of you know, TJ Hawkinson is now a Minnesota Viking. So we're sitting here with Brock Wright, not someone I'm interested in playing here. Then this next matchup, we have the Raiders taking on the Jaguars. For the Raiders, like in these videos, I just continually assume that Darren Waller is going to play. If Waller suits up, I think he's definitely a start, especially this week. On the other side, with the Jaguars, I think Evan Ingram has earned the start, designation here. He had an 100% route participation in London. That's crazy. 100% at the tight end position is wild. He turned that into 4 for 55 and a touchdown. This is also a great matchup against the Raiders, whose offense has basically just been a pass funnel. I believe they've given up the most points per game to the quarterback position and the tight end positions. I don't overreact to that tight end number because I think that number can be fluky. But if you're giving up the most points to the quarterback, you're giving up touchdowns, you're giving up passing volume, this is a great matchup for Evan Ingram. That leads us into the Colts taking on the Patriots. For the Colts, fading Mo Alley Cox, can't trust these tight ends. For the Patriots, it looked like Hunter Henry, had a runway to be a fantasy relevant guy. Then we look at this past week, his, route participation fell off. Actually, we saw Jonnu Smith take a big jump. They were basically 50-50 in route participation, which is not going to fly for Hunter Henry, especially on a poor passing offense. Then we have a divisional matchup between the Bills and the Jets. For the Bills, we've seen Dawson Knox, get into the end zone a few times over the past 3 weeks. He's still not someone I'm going to be trusting in my lineup. This is a very tough Jets defense. Dawson Knox just doesn't have the volume or the consistency. For the Jets, we've got a little Tyler Conklin resurgence here. He had his route participation get bounced up to 77%. That's a little lower than where he was early on in the season, but totally playable, especially when you turn it into 6 receptions for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. So we'll see if he can keep this role. If he can, he'll probably get bumped up to a start next week, especially with the Jets' weapons, kind of in flux here with Elijah Moore halfway benched, not getting traded. The whole thing's weird. Corey Davis banged up. I think he's a fringe start this week. Then we have the Vikings taking on the Commanders, and I have TJ Hockenson listed as a fringe start. I feel like some people aren't going to love that. Trust me, when TJ Hockenson is on that team for a full week, he will be a start heading into week 10. I just don't know how utilized he's going to be here in this first week. Like, they may kind of settle him in, get him in there 50, 60% of snaps. I'm not trusting 50 to 60% of snaps for Hockenson, but once he is, fully into that offense, he's definitely someone I will be playing. I think this is probably an upgrade for him moving forward. So interesting to see what TJ Hockenson will do. On the other side with the Commanders, definitely sitting Logan Thomas. Then we have the Seahawks taking on the Cardinals. For the Seahawks, sitting this tight end committee between Noah Fant and Will Dissly. For the Cardinals, we're going to continue to start Zach Ertz as a very strong tight end 1 play. Then we have the Rams taking on the Buccaneers. And Tyler Higbee, really unfortunate what's kind of happened here with him. He's going to be a fringe option this week. Through 5 weeks, it looked like Higbee was going to be a mid to high-end tight end 1. He was averaging 9.6 targets per game through 5 weeks. That is wildly impressive at the tight end position. His route participation was great. Then he suffers an ankle injury in week 5. Week 6, he struggles, only targeted 2 times. Then they had the bye. Then he comes back in week 8. Still seems, semi-limited. Targeted 6 times, but turns that into 2 receptions for 15 yards. And he only had a 39% route participation. A 39% route participation is not startable. The reason he's a start this week is in the hopes that that number jumps up, because if it stays there, that is not going to be good news fantasy-wise. And then for the Buccaneers, sitting Cade Otton. I think if Cam Brate continues to miss time and the Bucs offense can actually get it together, I think Otton could be a fringe play, but when the offense is performing so horribly, he's definitely going to be a sit. Then on Sunday Night Football, we have the Titans taking on the Chiefs. A clear sit with Austin Hooper, and obviously a clear start here with Travis Kelce. And then the final game of the week, Monday Night Football, we have the Ravens taking on the Saints. And you can see I have 2 tight ends here listed as a start for the Ravens, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. I did this because if Mark Andrews plays, he's definitely going to be a start. If Andrew misses with his shoulder/knee injury, then I think Isaiah Likely is actually a strong play. It's pretty rare at the tight end position where you can have like a handcuff tight end. The Ravens are really one of the only teams where you actually have that. So if Andrews plays, you're firing up Andrews, sitting Likely. If Andrews is out, you're firing up Likely, obviously then sitting Andrews if he is not playing. And then for the Saints, I have Taysom Hill as a start here. The workload we saw from Taysom Hill in week 8 was very encouraging. 10 carries, 2 targets, 1 pass attempt. That's the kind of usage we want to be seeing because he can give you a floor with that usage without having to get into the end zone. Like, I think he turned that like 10 carries into like 60 yards, 2 targets, a reception or 2, and then a pass attempt for like 2 yards. If he's getting all these opportunities, it can give him a solid floor, but it's also going to give him more opportunities to actually capitalize and get into the end zone. So I like Taysom Hill as a mid-tier tight end 1 this week, especially with the guys I mentioned who are on bye. But that is going to wrap it up for the Week 9 tight end position. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You want to see the other start sits, we've got the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. Those are all up on my channel, so go check those out. As always, thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.